There is a moment, and you may have felt it already, perhaps just before you clicked on this video, perhaps in the quiet hours of a night that refused to let you sleep, when something inside you shifts. Not dramatically, not with the thunder of revelation, quietly, like a door somewhere deep in your chest, opening just a crack, letting in a thin line of light from a room you had almost forgotten existed. You felt something. You couldn't name it. You still can't. But it pulled you here. And I want you to understand that pull was not accidental. Nothing about this moment is accidental, because somewhere, right now, there is a person. And this person is carrying something. Something so heavy, so privately devastating, that they have learned to move through the world as though the weight doesn't exist. They have learned to smile in the right places, to answer, "I'm fine," with just enough conviction to make people stop asking. They have become extraordinarily skilled at appearing okay. And the tragedy, the deep, aching tragedy, is that the better they became at pretending, the more invisible their truth became, even to themselves. They buried it so carefully that some mornings they wake up and almost believe the burial was a healing. Almost. But it wasn't. And somewhere beneath all that performance, beneath all that careful composure, there is a confession. It has been pressing against the inside of their ribs for longer than you know. It has been sitting at the back of their throat in every conversation you've had, every silence you've shared, every moment they almost said something and then swallowed it back down. This confession is not a small thing. It is not a casual admission or a minor unburdening. What you are about to hear, not with your ears, but with the deeper, more ancient part of you that has always known how to receive truth, is something this person has never been able to fully say out loud. And the reason it is breaking them is because confession unexpressed does not disappear. It transforms. It becomes pressure. It becomes sleeplessness. It becomes the way they go quiet in the middle of a laugh. It becomes the thing that lives just beneath every ordinary moment of their life. I want you to stay with me here. I want you to let your body settle. Let your breath slow. Because what we are about to enter together is not a casual conversation. It is something much older than conversation. It is the space where two people's inner worlds finally begin to speak the same language. The universe showed me something about this person. And I know how that sounds. I know it might make part of your mind want to pull back, to be rational, to protect yourself from something that feels too large to be real. But another part of you, the part that brought you here, already knows. Already senses that what I am going to tell you exists on a frequency that logic cannot fully access. So I am asking you, gently, to let that second part lead for a little while. This person thinks about you in ways they have never said, not briefly, not in the passing peripheral way that names drift through a mind. They think about you with a kind of sustained, almost helpless intensity that frightens them. They think about you in the morning before the day has a face. They think about you in the small, unguarded moments when they're standing in the shower and the water is too loud to be distracted by anything else, when they're driving somewhere and a song comes on that shouldn't make them think of you, and yet it always does, when they're lying in the dark with their eyes open and the ceiling offers them nothing except the unbearable spaciousness of their own mind. And in that spaciousness, you are there. You are always there. And the confession, the one that is breaking them, is not simply that they feel this. The confession is everything that surrounds the feeling. The shame of it, the confusion of it, the way they have told themselves repeatedly, logically, with great determination, that they should not feel this deeply, should not care this much, should not still be here in this emotional landscape when the world around them keeps suggesting they move on, keep going, let go. They have tried. If you only knew how genuinely, how exhaustingly they have tried. They have filled their days with noise and motion and the company of other people and all the strategies that are supposed to work. And none of it worked. Because you cannot outrun something that lives inside your own heartbeat. If this is already resonating somewhere in your body, not just your mind, but your body, your chest, your stomach, that quiet knowing that sits just below thought, I want you to type the number 11 in the comments right now. Because 11 is the number of spiritual awakening, of two forces finally aligning, of the moment when what has been hidden begins to surface. And if you typed it, even if only in your mind, that is already something true happening between you and this moment. Let me take you deeper, because the surface of this confession is just the beginning. There are layers beneath it that this person may not even consciously understand yet. The universe showed me that what this person is carrying is not only emotion, it is memory. It is the memory of a version of themselves that existed in your presence, a version they have not been able to find anywhere since. There is a specific quality of aliveness that came with knowing you, with being known by you, that nothing else has replicated. And this is the thing that confessions are really made of. Not just I miss you, or I love you, or even I was wrong. The real confession, the one that breaks a person open from the inside, is the one that says, I have not been the same. I do not know how to be the same. And I do not know if I want to be. Think about that for a moment. Think about what it means to carry that. To wake up every single day and manage a private grief that has no public language, that doesn't fit into any of the categories the world provides for how you're supposed to feel and heal and move forward. This person is not a dramatic person. They do not want to be seen as someone who cannot cope. They have probably been told, by themselves more than anyone, that this is too much, that they are too much, that the depth of what they feel is somehow disproportionate or embarrassing or a sign of weakness. And so they have made themselves small. They have compacted all of this enormous, living, breathing, emotional truth into something manageable enough to carry through a workday, through a social event, through the performed normalcy of an ordinary life. And the weight of that compaction is what is breaking them. Not the feeling itself. They could survive the feeling. It is the hiding of it. It is the daily performance of not feeling while the feeling continues to grow. There is a psychological phenomenon that I want you to understand, because understanding it will change how you see this person, and perhaps how you see yourself. When we suppress an emotion, we do not eliminate it. We give it power. We take something that might have resolved itself if expressed, and we push it underground, where it mutates, where it attaches itself to everything else, where it begins to run as a background program beneath all other experience. This person's confession has been running as a background program for a long time. It has been shaping their choices without their full awareness. It has been the reason they hesitated in situations they cannot explain, the reason certain things feel hollow, the reason the relief they expected to feel after time passed, after distance accumulated, never quite arrived. And now it is pushing against the surface. Now it is becoming urgent. And urgency, in emotional terms, is not aggression, it is desperation. It is the soul refusing to be silent any longer. It is the truth inside a person finally reaching a threshold where containment is no longer possible. Something has shifted for this person recently.
Something has changed in the internal landscape that has made the confession feel not just present, but necessary. As though something inside them has finally made a decision that the rest of them hasn't caught up to yet. As though a part of them has looked at all the years of silence and decided, enough. Enough hiding. Enough performing. Enough pretending that this isn't real, that it doesn't matter, that they are fine. They are not fine. And they know you would understand that, if only they could find the words. If only they could find the courage to cross the distance they have been maintaining. Not because they want the distance, but because the distance felt like the only safe option when closeness seemed impossible. When they didn't know if you still cared. When they couldn't face the possibility of reaching across that space and finding nothing reaching back. The universe showed me something else. It showed me that this person's silence has been a form of protection, but protection of you, not of themselves. They have been holding back because they do not want to disrupt your life, because they have convinced themselves that what they carry is a burden and not a gift. Because somewhere in their psychology, in the deep architecture of how they learned to love, they began to believe that their truest, most vulnerable feelings were too much for the people they most wanted to give them to. And so they learned to give less, to offer a curated version of themselves, to keep the most real parts private, preserved, unexpressed. And in doing so, in protecting you from their truth, they became increasingly alone inside it. If you are someone who has ever felt the specific loneliness of being in the presence of another person and still not being fully seen, you know exactly what I am describing. And I want you to type, "I see you," in the comments if any part of this is landing somewhere real inside you. Because this script is not just about this person. It is about the invisible emotional architecture that exists between people who have mattered to each other. And it is about what happens when the truth of that architecture is never spoken out loud. Now, I want to shift something. Because we have been sitting with the weight of this, and weight is important. It tells us what is real. It tells us what matters. But we cannot stay only in the weight. We have to look also at what the weight is made of. And what it is made of, at its core, is love. Not simple love, not comfortable or convenient love. The kind of love that doesn't behave rationally. The kind that persists in the absence of encouragement. The kind that lives in a person not because they chose it, but because it chose them. And no amount of deciding otherwise has been sufficient to dislodge it. This person loves you in the way that only happens once or twice in a life, if you're paying attention. They love you with the specific and terrible vulnerability of someone who has seen something in you. Not a perfect thing, not an idealized fantasy, but something real, something true. And that kind of seeing is the rarest and most frightening gift one person can offer another, because it requires them to have been fully present, fully open, fully themselves in your company. And they were. In whatever moments you shared, however long or brief, however easy or complicated, they were there. All of them. And what they saw of you, they held carefully, and they still hold it. The confession is this: they never stopped. Through everything that came after, the silence, the separation, the surface level okayness, they never stopped holding what they know of you with a tenderness that frightens them with its persistence. And they need you to know this. Not to change anything necessarily, not with a demand or an expectation, but because carrying a truth this large, alone, for this long, is a form of suffering that no person should have to sustain indefinitely. Because the confession is not a request, it is a release.
It is a person finally allowing themselves to be real, to be seen. To stop pretending that the most significant emotional experience of their recent life is something they have cleanly processed and neatly moved beyond. They have not moved beyond it. They have moved alongside it, every single day. And now something is coming. I want you to feel this. Something in the energetic space between you and this person is beginning to shift. The pressure they have been carrying is reaching a point of transformation. Not explosion, not collapse, but the kind of quiet cellular change that happens when something has been held long enough and the body finally decides that expression is safer than suppression. When the soul overrides the ego's insistence on protection. When the frequency of what is true begins to transmit outward, whether or not the person consciously sends it. You may have already been feeling this, something unexplained. A warmth or a restlessness, or a sudden, strange awareness of this person at odd moments. A dream that you dismissed. A thought that arrived uninvited and stayed longer than it should have. The sensation of something unfinished. Not in a heavy way, but in the way of a sentence that hasn't ended yet. The chord that hasn't resolved. If that has been happening for you, it is not coincidence. It is correspondence. It is the way souls communicate when words have failed. And I want you to receive this next part with all of yourself. I want you to let it move through you rather than just across you. Because what I am about to say is the center of everything. This person's confession is not a weakness. It is the most courageous thing they have ever done. Even if they have not yet found a way to speak it aloud to you, even if it has only ever existed in the private cathedral of their own chest. The courage is in the feeling itself, in the refusal to fully numb, in the quiet, stubborn persistence of caring about something real in a world that keeps offering easier, shallower substitutes. They chose depth. They chose truth. They chose you, not as an obsession, not as an avoidance of living, but as the standard by which they now measure what is real and what is performance in their own inner life. You deserve to know that you have been that for someone, that your existence, your specific and unrepeatable presence in the life of another person, has mattered in ways that transcend ordinary definition. That somewhere, in the private interior of another human being, you are not forgotten. You are not replaced. You are held with an aching, tender, exhausted faithfulness
by someone who is only now beginning to understand that holding alone is no longer enough, that it was never the plan to hold alone forever. Something is about to change, not in the dramatic, sudden way of movies and revelations, but in the real way, the slow, inevitable way of a tide that has been building for years and is finally reaching the shore. This person is moving toward truth. They are moving toward you, not necessarily in the physical sense, but in the deeper sense of finally allowing what is real to be real, of stopping the performance, of letting the confession exist outside of themselves for the first time. And your role in this, your only role, the one that no one else can play, is simply to remain open, to resist the temptation to protect yourself so thoroughly that you cannot be reached, to remember that vulnerability, when it arrives from someone who has suppressed it for this long, is one of the most sacred things one person can offer another. To understand that when this person finally speaks, whenever that is, however that looks, what they are really saying is, "You were real to me. You are still real to me. And I could not pretend otherwise for one more day." If you are ready to receive what is coming, if some part of you has always been ready, has in fact been waiting in ways you didn't allow yourself to fully acknowledge, then I want you to take a breath right now. A real one. Let it fill you completely and release slowly. Because what releases with it is the armor you've been carrying, the carefully maintained distance, the practiced indifference that was never really indifference at all. You felt something for this person too. Don't look away from that. Don't let the habit of self-protection turn that truth into something smaller than it is. Two people carrying the same unnamed weight in different directions is not a story of incompatibility. It is a story of two souls who learned to protect themselves so well, they almost protected themselves out of something extraordinary. Almost. The universe does not bring you to moments like this one without reason. It does not create a resonance this specific, this precise, this undeniable, simply to let it dissolve unacknowledged. What you feel when you think of this person, that combination of warmth and ache, of possibility and fear, of familiarity so deep it bypasses the mind entirely. That is information. That is the most reliable kind of information that exists. Not the kind you analyze, the kind you trust. So trust it. And as this chapter turns, as this person's confession moves from internal weight to living truth, let yourself be someone who can hold it. Not perfectly, not without fear, but with the fullness of a person who has finally stopped pretending that ordinary is enough when something extraordinary is still waiting to be acknowledged. The confession is coming, and it is not the end of something. It is the first honest breath of something that was always supposed to begin.